my name's Alex Barham. This is my review for the Zet Kayak's Toro. You see a lot of descriptions for this boat calling it, newfangled, an SUV of kayaks. It's sort of hard from just a quick Google search to figure out what this boat is really about. So let's just start by looking at the hull. You've got a rounded off, displacement looking hull, great for bouncing off rocks, coming out, widening, flaring to the seat position where you begin to have these flatter lines, hard chines which protrude out, and then tapering back in an arrowhead pattern to a squared off, bulbous stern. What does that all mean? Well, what it means is that you get a little bit of a lot with this boat. This boat is very good with bouncing off rocks. The hard chines in the back really love pushy big water, specifically cross current moves. And the bulbous stern is excellent for shooting out of holes and just keeping you up and going. This really puts the Zet in a class of boats with other sort of beginner-friendly models I think about, like the Remix or the Mamba. And especially if you look at the hull of a Mamba, you'll see a lot of comparison to the Toro. But what you really find with the Toro, with a little bit less rocker and just a stretched out platform, is something that's much quicker, it's a lot more nimble, and it allows you to both steer with your legs and carve in and out of places, but also in a pinch, simply just take a really big pry stroke and throw the boat around, because right under you it is so smooth and those chines only really dig in the back when you set them in. Unlike other boats where they kind of dig in without you always wanting them to, the Toro, without having a ton of stern rocker, allows you to selectively dig those chines in a lot. The feeling of paddling a Toro is mostly one of stability and predictability. What I mean by that is you usually have a really good idea of what the boat's gonna do. There's not a lot of surprises. It's extremely intuitive while still being very high performance. However, all of these things come at a cost, and that cost is that this boat is nowhere near as fast as what we usually look for in modern times. Now, why is that? Well, to the absolute astoundment of everyone that I put in this boat and asked to give it a try, no one really realized, because this is America and Zet is only just now breaking into the market, this boat really came out in 2015, 2016. That puts it back when the original 9R came out, before we redefined how we look at creaking, going really fast through stuff. So for the time, this was quite a quick, aggressive, yet kind of all-arounder boat. And now you kind of take the quick out of that element just by pure comparison. However, it still stands up on its own 2 feet. It's still just a pleasure to paddle. It really makes me think about all the people who come to me and say, I've had a Remix, I've had a Mamba, I've had this boat that I liked, I could drive it, I knew what it was going to do, but I want something that is higher performance, that's going to ask more of me but give more back, but I'm just not finding it in these racy boats. I find the Toro to be right in there, and but the same token, you could also just simply take a beginner, stuff them in this boat, and go paddle this till you're good. I've been talking about beginners a bunch. I do not want to give you the impression that this is solely a beginner's boat. I actually didn't put any beginners in this boat. I explicitly put advanced and intermediate paddlers in this boat, and they all walked away saying, this is very good. Personally, I found I was a tiny bit big. The listed specs show this at 325 liters, which is like 85 gallons. So a solid medium large by American standards. I was able to paddle it just fine. I am a medium-large person, although I will say I really think that this is going to be better for people on the medium side than it is for the large side. Paddling these Zet boats, you really feel the influence of slalom in how they design and think about paddling. What I mean by that is this isn't some warm blanket that's going to just pick you up and bob you down the river. This boat really does expect you to use all of the tools at your disposal to squeeze out performance, and it expects you to want to do that. So what I mean by that is those rails back there, they're just not going to dig in unless you're leaning back and onto the chine. By the same token, if you come out of a drop and you lean back and on the chine, it's going to spin on you, right? Because you're not doing the technical right thing. Jumping into an eddy or any sort of transition move, it expects you to lean back, get on top of something, lean forward, taper the boat off. None of it's incorrect or really harder or something that you shouldn't be doing anyway. What I'm saying is that because these boats have slightly less rocker in them, you're going to find that they don't do as much of the work for you. They expect you to be manipulating the boat front to back a lot more and really working your curving turns like a ski or snowboard as you paddle the river. Taking a first look at the Toro, you will notice that these sidewalls right at the foot blocks and coming back to the knee pocket are super vertical. What this does is it allows in big water where you take sort of a sloping side hit into a wave for the boat to take that and transfer it sort of like a keel line out and away off the wave. It is super fun paddling this in bigger flows, just doing those crisscrosses across big green faces and jet ferrying across the river. It can take a moment to get up to speed, but once this thing is cutting across current, it does so really nicely. And it just bounces from one feature to the next like guardrails, just skipping downriver. One of the things that really stands out to me about how the Toro paddles creaking is that you always seem to have an extra split second to do everything. Because the boat is so predictable, stable, and just takes care of itself, you always seem to have this second of glide where you're in control, but you don't actually have to do anything coming into drops. And I don't really know how to explain it besides time seems to slow down a little bit when you paddle the Toro, just because there's nothing for you to do so often. The boat is just taking care of itself in that moment. Now, some of this is definitely the fact that we've gotten really accustomed to super fast boats. So we're used to having to do something because everything's rushing at us so quickly. So maybe that's what I'm really feeling, but I found that so many things were just a tiny bit easier. I just had the time to think and process, and when I did make a decision of what I was going to do next, I always had the time to fully execute it. I wasn't jerking something in the last moment. Now, that said, one of the things you sort of have to adapt to is that, again, less rocker profile. This thing builds speed going down rapid. So you come in like almost nervous that you're not going to punch the hole or get the boof or whatever, and then it comes to speed beautifully entering the rapid. Exiting the rapid, it usually holds for a second because with that longer, stretched out, less actual rocker in the profile, it tends to just barrel through things. So whereas something with a lot of rocker would hit a hole and jump up and skip, the Toro is going to nose jump, but then continue and flop the bow back down, more like a slalom boat. So it tends to punch things in a way that I'm not necessarily used to paddling modern boats, but is still extremely effective, part of that is absolutely me being on the slightly heavier side for this boat. However, it's something that everyone sort of mentioned and noticed. It's neither bad nor amazing. It's just a different way of doing things. You're not going to get that dry bow look that I usually go for, but it's certainly still completely effective and fine. Another thing you really notice paddling these boats is that the outfitting and the plastic construction being so light, for a boat this size, it is very easy to just throw around in the middle of a rapid, in the middle of a drop, carrying it to the river. It's just a very easy boat to manhandle around. Just whip from side to side, stop, completely change what direction you're going, and go that way instead. So what this allows for is paddlers who haven't yet figured out how to seamlessly put a line together or aren't really getting the whole carving thing and just want to be able to, go to point A, turn, go to point B, turn, go to point C. The Toro actually does that really well. Not a lot of boats these days have that ability to do that and make it look good, but the Toro actually does that really well. So if that's you, this is going to be your boat. It's not the best technique. You should probably work on that, but this is going to be your boat and it'll let you work on that. So what are my nitpicks, things I would have changed or done differently? Well, again, this came out 2015, 2016. So this is a extremely well-aged design, all things considered, in terms of how far we have moved in that period of time and how our expectations have changed. What I would love to see is a tiny bit more rocker. Just in the stern, you will find that this has a slightly different technique for boofing than you're maybe used to. Personally, I was sitting as far back in the seat as I could and leaning forward in an aggressive dominant position when I was paddling this boat. And that really let me get the stern off when I was doing boofs. But you may find if you are paddling shallower, rockier stuff, that you are tail tapping, coming off of boofs, jumping into eddies, stuff like that. And that's just because with that flatter stern rocker, there's no escaping. There's just no letting the rock go by. It's going to hit. So you have to boof at high speed for that kind of stuff or have the depth of water column to let the boat get up. I'm not sure really how else to express this boat, aside from just saying that this thing does exactly what you expect it to without being, nerfed down, wrapped in bubble wrap, no performance left in it at all. No, very high performance. There's a lot to uncork and unpack in this boat, and it will do really anything that you ask of it while still being predictable, easy to paddle, and just generally put a smile on your face. That said, if you want to race this boat, it's sort of outclassed these days. But if you just want a really high performance creaker that leaves you feeling in control, doesn't make you feel like you're 6 feet tall or you're paddling an absolute barge, but you're still in something that has substance, really is going to help you maybe get to the next level in your kayaking, this boat is really a good pick and really something to consider demoing and checking out. I think that nerfing it down and just saying like, oh, it's sort of a boat I like to put beginners in, which is actually what the guys from Zet told me, really undersells the abilities of this design. In a market where we are moving further and further away from boats that I can put a beginner into and then watch them progress to class 5 and not need to change something out along the way or give up a lot. This boat pretty much stands alone right now. I mean, the Dagger code's about to come out. It's taking a stab at that stain market. Can't wait to give that a shot and see where it lands. But with the remix discontinued, the Mamba temporarily at least discontinued, this is that boat right now. Hopefully, this is something that has competition though in a way, because we really need something for these up-and-comers to go and jump from 3 to 5 in. Something that you used to not be able to do like 10 years ago in a season or two, but now boats have gotten so good that you can. And I see so much value in that. So because of that, I see so much value in what the Toro is and does. It's not often that you hear me say like, I really like this boat, but yeah, I really like this boat. I thought it performed awesome, and it's not going to be for everybody. Nothing is, but this is worth the demo if you can get your hands on it. It's hard to get your hands on one, but definitely demo one or borrow one. Check it out. It's not going to be what you're used to, but that's not a bad thing. That's the line that I told everyone who demoed one from me, with also a caveat of do not lean back, you will flip. So I think that's it. Have a great one. The Scorch and the Chili are up next.